Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News Extra, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. President Trump calls Russia's attack on Ukraine terrible and believes they made a mistake, pointing the finger at Putin, Biden and Zelensky. Trump threatens new tariffs on Chinese-made smartphones days after exempting them. And an all-female blast-off. 6 celebrities, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, make history as they travel into space on Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin rocket. To our top story, and President Trump has said Russia's attack on Sumy was a mistake. Russia claims more than 60 Ukrainian armed forces were killed in the blast and accused Ukraine of using civilians as human shields. Speaking on board Air Force One, Trump told journalists Russia's attack was a mistake.
Well, I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing. I think the war is, for that war to have started, is an abuse of power. This country would have never allowed that war to have started if I were president. They made a mistake. I believe it was, look, you're going to ask them. This is Biden's war. This is not my war.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by media strategist and former editor-in-chief Michael Jabri Pickett and Al Arabiya's geopolitical security analyst Riad Kahwahji. Thank you so much for joining me, both of you. Let's start with you, Michael. So many condemning this latest attack, but Trump is pointing the finger at Putin, Zelensky and Joe Biden for the war.
So this is, I think, President Trump's MO. For instance, he was just in the Oval Office last week when he went on a bit of a diatribe, when he started listing all the issues that he's faced with all the illegal immigrants that have come into the country. I'm more interested in the game that Vladimir Putin is playing as opposed to Donald Trump. Donald Trump loves the headline. I think Vladimir Putin is playing some sort of geopolitical sleight of hand. He recognizes that while Donald Trump waits for the big headline that there might be a ceasefire, Vladimir Putin can continue to do what he's doing on the battlefield and make inroads as he is, while he focuses on what matters to him, and he'll leave the headlines to Donald Trump. When you don't care about the global opinion about what's happening, it's, I think, easy for someone like Vladimir Putin to keep doing what he's doing. So this attack, I think we'll see more of these as the days and weeks go on.
Who's in the driving seat, do you think, Riad, at the moment?
Right now, things have changed a lot to Ukraine, to Zelensky. For the past couple of years, the war has turned into a war of attrition, where Russia has been trying to increase the pressure, the bombardment, so forth, to force the other side to concede to its demands. Zelensky had, for the past 4 years, there was this strong, unconditional support from the US, flow of weapons that kept Ukraine into the fight, enabled Ukraine to exert pain on Russia as well. Now things have changed for Zelensky. We have a president that wants to make everything transactional, so no more free aid. There has to be something in return, talking about agreement on using minerals, power, and so forth in Ukraine. Also on how much weapons to be sent. So this has emboldened Putin. I think Putin sees an advantage here to double down with his strategy of attrition. So he's increasing these strikes, the push on the front lines to make gains so that he can force Zelensky into more concessions, especially that Putin, he sees this bad chemistry between Zelensky and Trump, and he wants to try to capitalize on this. So I think what we saw from yesterday's strike is that maybe President Trump is realizing that ending the war is something easier said than done, especially with a player like Putin.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we did see last week, on Friday, Steve Witkoff went to St. Petersburg. He met Vladimir Putin. The US and Russia are definitely talking. We've seen that 3 times now. But then it doesn't seem like anything's moving forward. I don't know what you think, but then we see 34 people killed in Sumy today. And as you said, Putin almost feels emboldened.
And I think again, this is where the sleight of hand comes in, because he knows while he's talking to the U.S., he's allowing President Trump to get on Air Force One on a Sunday as he flies back from Mar-a-Lago to talk about, I think things are going okay. And while he's feeling a little bit optimistic that things are moving along as they should, again, that's when Vladimir Putin is doing what he's doing. And this is where I think they're playing different games. And I think President Putin knows the strengths and the weaknesses of Trump, and he's using it to his advantage.
So earlier, I actually spoke to US Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, Mark Pickett. This is what he had to say about Trump's stance on the war.
President Trump has been fairly consistent. He's not the president of Russia. He's not the president of the Ukraine. He's president of the United States, and he believes that this war was unwise to start, and he wants to finish it.
So, Riad, we just heard there from Mark Pickett, but we also saw Trump's latest statements on social media and where he's firmly laying the blame. French President Emmanuel Macron described the attack as an abuse on human rights. Europe and America just seem to be so far apart on an agreement how to end this war. How concerning is this divide?
It's very concerning because it's very important to get both or all players who are supposedly on one side, which is US, Europe, and Ukraine, on the same page. When Europe says they want to see an end to the war, how do they want to see this end? Do they want to see it with Russia occupying large chunks and keeping large chunks and annexing large chunks of Ukraine? Is that what that's their vision of the end of the war? Is that what also Zelensky sees as the best way to end this war? It's very important to get all of them aligned. What do they expect from Russia in whatever agreement is going to be reached? So definitely the Western side is not now aligned. They're not on the same page. And I think this is going to be to the benefit of Putin, who's going to really try to capitalize on this situation.
Do you agree with that? Do you think Putin's going to try to capitalize? Or will Trump surprise us and tighten the screws on Russia's economy? We just don't know.
So I think one of the big differences between Trump 1 and Trump 2.0, which is what we're going through now, is that in this administration, he's not surrounding himself with people who are incredibly intelligent and independent thinkers and will push back. And that means that he's left to his own devices. And when Donald Trump is left to his own devices, he's going by instinct. Now, his instinct publicly seems to be, I like Vladimir Putin and I trust him. And I think, as Riad said, that is going to be a big mistake. And as the European leaders know, I don't think that you can trust Vladimir Putin.
He's not a diplomatic man, do you think, Riad, Vladimir Putin?
Definitely not. We have not seen this display of diplomacy in a lot of the situations Russia was involved in. He was not diplomatic in Georgia, and he was not diplomatic in Abkhazia and Chechnya and now in Ukraine. And that's, I think, the point President Zelensky was trying to make in the famous quarrel we saw in the Oval Office. I mean, he was trying to make a point that history, and when it comes to the Ukrainian conflict, shows that Putin never endorse diplomacy, was never playing diplomatically. It was always pushing for war. And that was the point of contention between President Zelensky and President Trump and Vice President Vance. And I think what we're seeing now is proving Zelensky right, that Putin is not playing by diplomacy. Right now, so far, Russia has not given a response, a positive response, to the U.S. proposal to end or to come to a ceasefire in preparation to end this war.
Well, we're going to come back to Donald Trump, but just stay right there and I'll be back with you in a moment. First, let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines around the world today. Iran's foreign minister will visit Russia this week in regards to the latest talks between Iran and the US. The discussions surrounding Tehran's nuclear program, which took place in Oman, were said to be positive and constructive. President Trump had threatened military action if a deal on halting the nuclear program was not reached. Current centre-right Ecuador President Daniel Noboa has won the country's presidential election runoff and will now serve a full 4-year term. Noboa, who has been in power since November 2023, has called his victory historic. His left-wing rival, Luisa Gonzalez, has said she has not accepted the result and has also claimed fraud. 2 British tourists have drowned near the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. A 17-year-old boy and a 46-year-old man, a father and son, were swept out to sea after swimming in Queensland. They were both declared dead at the scene after being pulled from the water by a police rescue helicopter. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was forced to flee his home in the middle of the night after an alleged arsonist set fire to their residence in Harrisburg. Shapiro, who is a political Democrat candidate for the 2028 presidential nominations, has said his family woke at 2 a.m. to bangs on the doors by police. The governor's wife, 4 children and 2 dogs were evacuated as the fire service did put out those flames. Now, President Trump has said Chinese-made smartphones and electronics will not be exempt from tariffs as the US president moves them into a different type of bucket. Earlier today, European stocks bounced back after an official announcement revealed some of these products would escape levies of up to 145%. China had previously asked Trump to completely cancel his tariff plans. So, Michael, let's start with a lot's gone on this weekend when it comes to tariffs, and no surprise there. But is Trump's smartphone and electronics olive branch is significant to the trade war retreat, do you think?
I don't think so, because this is just the first, or should I say the 10th shoe to drop, and we know there's going to be more. He's already said that there'll be more in the next coming days. I'm more concerned about the messages that this sends to the market, as we've talked about on the show many times. The market needs stability. They need to know what's going to be happening. Companies, even American investors in America, need to know what's happening in the next 6 months or the next 3 years. They need to be able to look at something that's slightly predictable, and they're not getting that, because every day President Trump or some various member of his team comes out and says something that sends the markets either up or down. And this is not significant because we know that there'll be something else that's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, because 24 hours feels like a long time at the moment in the Trump administration. But Riad, let's concentrate on China, because I know Xi Jinping has been visiting Vietnam today. We saw him in Hanoi. He's really trying to bolster relationships and trade with Southeast Asia. Is this a crucial time to improve deals for China around the world?
Of course. I mean, China right now is going to try to take the most advantage of this situation. We've seen President Trump imposed tariffs on a good number of countries. Then he decided to put on for 90 days. That means after 90 days, you might see this, many countries might come again under this tariffs. So a lot of these countries are now looking for options, trying to see, trying to make plans, contingency plans that just in case they were under tariffs, what they're going to do, what markets they should seek. China and US were already in a great power competition. Now with this tariff war, with many countries worried of action by the US, especially allies of the US, this is an opportunity for China to make its move, to grow its relations, to build on the Belt and Road Initiative, linking up with Europe. The Europeans are now open to talk. They were really agitated by President Trump's move. So, and we've seen China working hard on creating these big economic blocks, like the Shanghai Group, the BRICS, and so forth. Also, this is going to fall to the advantage of China in this case. So, I think right now, the way things are going, although the Chinese business is going to feel some pain, but strategically, I think China is going to improve its position.
Well, we're going to leave it there for tariffs, and we are going to be back with you in just a moment. But I just want to say one thing. There is no doubt that tariffs are going to be keeping us busy and on the agenda for a very long time. Now, talks between the US and Iran took place in Oman, and that was over the weekend to discuss Tehran's nuclear program. A second round of meetings will take place this week. Al Arabia's Hadley Gamble sat down for an exclusive interview with US Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who revealed plans for a US-Saudi nuclear deal, President Trump's energy agenda, and why Washington will not tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran. Take a listen.
Iran talks just taking place over the weekend in Oman. The readout has been, at least from the U.S. side, that these were constructive conversations. In your mind, does that rule out the possibility that the United States could sanction Iranian crude?
I'd say way too early to tell, way too early to tell. We had 4 years of let's appease Iran, let's just ask them to be better actors and not enforce the sanctions that were already in place when the last administration came in. And what happened? Iranian oil exports surged. With the standing in the way of energy, we also had higher prices, higher exports, lots of money. You've seen what's happened with Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and a rapid acceleration of the Iranian nuclear program. None of those were good results. Now we have a strong, firm leadership in the United States that's, again, pro-prosperity, pro-peace, and a very firm line on Iran that is just not acceptable, not just for the Middle East, but for the world, to have a nuclear-armed Iran. Strong, resolute leadership in alignment with our allies is going to lead to that positive outcome. We don't know exactly how that'll unfold, but we're not going to tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran.
Yeah, so is the message to the region, just stick with us, we're going to get those prices back to a sustainable level? Because under 60 is not good for Saudi.
Yeah, again, you're talking short-term oil prices right now. I think the message to the region absolutely is American partnership is back. It's stronger. We're not shunning your industry or not visiting you because we think you're somehow against the world interests, even though you're you're providing the energy sources that make our world go round. Our interest is America is a strong, resolute ally. American leadership is going to lead to strong economic growth, which leads to strong growth in energy demand, which is great for energy producers and for energy consumers.
There was some fear in the opening weeks of the Trump administration that the president might declare war on OPEC. Is that going to happen?
Oh, I don't see that happening at all. The nations here in the Middle East, I think, fundamentally want the same thing we want, which is today we've got 1 billion people that live nice, wonderful, energized lives like you and I do. We have 7 billion people that wish they lived that way. The only way to have those 7 billion people live like you and I is just massively more energy in the world. And to get massively more energy, You have to make long-term, multi-decadal investments in energy production, in energy infrastructure, and transport to bring that energy around the world. That was frozen for the last 4 years. You know, there's all this attempt that we're going to shame the world into stop growing their consumption of energy. Those 7 billion people just shouldn't deserve lives like us. That's just shameful, and that's just wrong. I'm seeing nothing but optimism on my visits here in the Middle East. That sort of common sense has returned to the United States. We're pro-energy, we're pro-prosperity at home, and pro-peace abroad. That's a pretty positive agenda. Nuclear is certainly one of those areas. To get a specific agreement to partner on commercial nuclear development in Saudi Arabia, that'll take a little bit longer. That'll be months, not weeks.
But you're going to get there.
I think it's likely we will.
Now, does that require that the Saudis sign a 1-2-3 agreement with the United States?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that won't happen without that agreement being
Correct.
signed.
Correct. Yeah, we'll need a 1-2-3 agreement and a broader, specific framework for how we're going to cooperate together and how things will work. But based on the discussion so far and where we stand, I think it's likely we get there.
Excellent. Is there a bottom in your mind that shale in the United States just won't be profitable anymore?
There's a portfolio of drilling locations. The best operators with the best locations have very low break-even prices. The lower quality operators that have lower quality have resources that are much lower quality, their price to break even is much higher. It's more a continuum. There's not a one price it works and one price it doesn't work. But I will say that the price at which it does work has dropped dramatically over the last 10 or 15 years. That's American technology, American innovation, American efficiency in supply chain. So the shale industry has continually reinvented itself and continued to innovate.
And in your mind, those who would say the president's putting us out of business, are they wrong?
Oh, they're wrong. They're wrong. That's concerns about short term, and that's, people always take a trend, however long that trend is, and extrapolate that trend. The world just doesn't work that way.
Two Israeli missiles hit a hospital in Gaza on Sunday, affecting the emergency department and damaging buildings. No casualties have been reported in the strike. It comes as reports suggest Hamas left talks in Cairo without agreeing to a ceasefire proposal, but agreed to continue talks. Riad, we've seen pictures of the hospital wards in Gaza and the devastating aftermath of these strikes. What more do we know about what's happened?
Well, I'm, like many people, waiting to see the evidence that justify targeting a hospital under the Geneva Convention about rules of war. Targeting a hospital or aid workers is a war crime, is forbidden completely. The only justification if it is used clearly by the combatants of the other side. And so far, we haven't seen any evidence supporting this. What we know is that Israel has an announced strategy of relocating the people of Gaza. They have the Israeli government ministers are not shy about declaring this objective, this strategy. And to do so, they have been waging this scorched earth strategy and targeting everything in Gaza just to remove all the living essentials. So they're destroying all the water resources, electricity, and now hospitals, so that the people of Gaza will not have anything that would support them or keep them living in that strip.
So we have heard from the Israeli forces following this latest attack. What have they said, and do you agree with what Riad's saying about how difficult life is becoming for Gazans? We obviously heard Trump talk about the Riviera of the Middle East. Are we moving towards that stage?
So I definitely agree with my colleague Riad, and I think that what they are trying to do, what the Israelis are trying to do, is a concerted strategic approach to hopefully, from their point of view, get the Palestinians to leave Gaza. But what they've been saying about this particular incident is pretty much the same thing they've been saying for the past 18 months, which is that Hamas has been using it as a command and control center. Now, you also have to remember a couple of things. One, as Riad said, that under international humanitarian law, hospitals are supposed to be protected. It was just 3 weeks ago that the Israelis shot at the 15 aid workers. They killed them, they buried them, then they lied about it. So while Hamas might have been using that hospital as a command and control center, I'm certainly not believing anything that the Israelis say, because they are, again, part of their strategy. They are being very deliberate about what it is that they're putting out to the press. And unlike Donald Trump's administration, they are consistent with their messaging.
So I just wanted to go back to the hostages. So we do know that Hamas was in Egypt today. It seems like the ceasefire proposal has been rejected. They want the hostages back, Israel. They're also saying this is why maximum pressure is being put on Gaza. But what's the reality of the hostages still being alive? Do we even know how many hostages there are?
We don't know how many are still alive. Hamas keeps saying, or said after the collapse of the ceasefire, that some of the living were killed in the recent Israeli recurring bombardment of the Strip. We don't have an exact number of those who are still living, but we know there are at least over a dozen who are still alive, according to the Israeli media. But still also we have a dilemma with Hamas. You know, what would be the terms that would bring the suffering to an end? And it appears that Hamas is negotiating its future survival as an organization, while the innocent civilians are suffering the consequences. So here we have the issue of the Israeli government and their policy of driving the Gazans out, and we're also dealing with Hamas, who is now not really as much concerned about the survival of their people and the civilians as about their own survival as an organization to stay in control inside Gaza. So this is where we have the point of contention, the conflict and the disputes we're having between Hamas and a lot of the Arab countries as well.
A difficult situation, definitely. Yes. And once again, as we said, talks are still continuing, so we'll have to wait to see where they eventually end up. But we're going to move on to something slightly different now, actually. And our next story is about a group of celebrities who have taken part in an all-female Blue Origin space mission. Earlier today, pop star Katy Perry, TV presenter Gayle King, along with others, became the first all-female crew in more than 60 years to blast into space. Their trip lasted 11 minutes, taking off and landing in West Texas. Here's how some of them described the experience.
This experience is second to being a mom. Wow. Yeah, that's it. That's why it was hard for me to go, because that's all my love right there. And I have to surrender and trust that the universe is going to take care of me and protect me, and also my family and my daughter, because like I am full up from being able to get that gift of being a mom, and to go to space is incredible. And I wanted to model courage and worthiness and fearlessness.
It's oddly quiet when you get up there. It's really quiet and peaceful, and you look down at the planet and you think, that's where we came from. And to me, it's such a reminder about how we need to do better, be better. Do better, be better human beings.
And what do you mean by that?
Processing. Well, it's so nasty and so vitriolic nowadays. And I mean, if everybody could experience that peace that we had up there, and the kindness and what it takes to do what we did, all the people that it took to get us up there and get us back safely, I'll never, ever, ever forget.
So Riad and Michael were both smiling there, but extremely emotional scenes, and it seems to be that they got an overview effect. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but seeing Earth from space apparently changes astronauts' minds. I don't know what you make of that. I don't know who wants to go first, but there we are. Do you think that this visit probably gave them a different view on how we should be running the world?
So I think it was incredibly performative. I mean, we live in a social media age where we knew that they would be posting on social media, that cameras would be there, that this is made for television, and even more so, it's made for social media. So they knew the role they needed to play. Look, is it admirable that it was all women, and is it wonderful and a great message to the next generation? 100%. But the comments, maybe I'm a little bit too old, maybe I'm a little bit too cynical about these things, but I don't know that this isn't something that you can believe with all your heart.
I don't know. What do you think, Riad? Are you feeling skeptical about it, or did you wish that you were on that flight?
Well, space is going to be the open frontiers. This is the future. And we're going to be seeing more and more of such trips, you want to call them trips, you know, people going and coming. But definitely, you go up, imagine the person's feeling the first time they get on the plane and they go up and they see the world. They look at the ground, you know, going up further. Definitely, you're going to have a different perspective on so many things. But it's not going to make them astronauts. If I'm able to pay that much to get on a trip that will take me for a few hours in space, I will not call myself an astronaut. You know, an astronaut is a person that undergoes really heavy, excruciating training for several months. And they have to undergo tests to qualify to get on the rocket, to man it, to fly it, and bring it back down. Then they earn the title of being astronaut. But just to be a passenger, I don't think so. But however, this is really, as Michael pointed out, this is quite, telling, very optimistic to the future. And it would encourage a lot, to get more involved in space.
Well, they technically actually are astronauts, Michael, because they went past the Kármán line. So do you agree with Riad? Are they astronauts?
So the optics here look bad. Two men, two bald men, arguing with a woman who's defending 6 women who went up in space.
Yeah.
Look, technically, I would say if NASA's going to say they're astronauts, then they're astronauts. I don't know that 2 days of training and an 11-minute flight puts you at the same level as the 2 astronauts who were up there for 9 months.
9 months, yes.
I think that there's a little bit of a difference there.
Well, I think also another thing that we need to remember is it was all females. They were in very cool space outfits, weren't they? They were designed. And I think, as you did say, it's kind of inspirational for young women. And I'm sure maybe, someone's daughter out there might become a famous astronaut after watching Katy Perry flying up there. But now we're going to cross over to something else, and it's the quirky stories of the day. And I played golf, a couple of days ago, so maybe I'm a famous golfer if we're going along these lines. But let's talk about the Masters, Michael, because it's been really exciting. We saw Rory McIlroy get a career Grand Slam. He got the green jacket at Augusta. Gosh, it's been a real long time in the making. Obviously he had some bad times, especially back in 2011. What did you make of it all? So
from a sports point of view, I think it was a wonderful story. He's played 17 Masters, and it's been 11 years since his last major championship. And he needed this one more victory to be one of 6 golfers to achieve the career Grand Slam. And watching him on Sunday, you thought maybe he was going to succumb to the pressure again. Yeah. Maybe he was going to buckle. Now, I would say he bent, but he didn't collapse. And I'm grateful for that, because that moment on the 18th hole, which would have been his 19th hole for the day because it was overtime, I think that's what makes sports so enjoyable. It's unscripted, and you don't know how it's going to go. So when he fell down on his knees and he was crying, and it was just, I think we could all appreciate how special a moment that is. So from that point of view, I'm definitely in his corner, and I'm happy that he was able to become the 6th golfer to achieve the career Grand Slam.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I don't know if you watched it, but my father and I were messaging each other. My father's a really keen golfer and said to me, Rory tried his best to lose it, but he managed to come back from the brink. Are you a golf fan? What did you think of Rory McIlroy?
Unfortunately, I'm not a golf fan, but it was all over the news. I mean, it's something that I really heard the commentators on the radio talk about it, and as Michael just said now, it really sounded like exciting, and there was a lot of drama, in the last bit of it.
There was a lot of drama, and as I also said, Justin Rose, extremely gracious in defeat, of course, a fellow man who plays in his team. But Riad, we want to go on to something with you, and it's an article claiming climate change is supercharging pollen. And this really caught your eye today. Tell me why.
Because I suffer when I'm allergic to pollen and to smoke and strong smells. And when I lived in London and in the US and so forth, where there's, unlike in Dubai, the climate is different than was the case in Europe and the West, I would really suffer during the spring, summer. Now, with the climate change, where we have these strong winds that develop suddenly, could take the pollen, to great distances, even reaching areas where people might be moving into neighborhoods where there's not that many trees or flowers to be safe. They're not going to escape it. It's going to reach everybody. Again, this is something that there's a good number of people who suffer from allergy, who have from the pollen, and well, definitely this climate change will exacerbate it.
So not good news at all if you are one of those hay fever sufferers. Maybe don't get on the golf course too soon, because it probably makes it even worse. But yeah, we'll be right back with you. Thank you so much. And thanks so much to today's guests. That was media strategist and former editor-in-chief Michael Jabri Pickett and Al Arabia's geopolitical security analyst Riad Kahwahji. Here's a reminder of our top stories. President Trump calls Russia's attack on Ukraine terrible and believes they made a mistake, pointing the finger at Putin, Biden, and also Zelensky. Trump threatens new tariffs on Chinese-made smartphones days after exempting them. And an all-female blast-off. 6 celebrities, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, make history as they travel into space on Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin rockets. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. GNT with Tom Burgess-Watson is coming up next. That will be followed by The Riz Khan Show. Goodbye and thank you for joining us.